You mentioned unconscious biases that we sometimes have, for example, towards some gender, girls over boys or vice versa, or feeling I don't know anything about someone from Norway, I won't ask that student, and it's often unconscious, you know. I would often find, particularly that when there was a combination, say a female Asian student, through no conscious decision, I think, of the teachers, they wouldn't be called upon to ask questions. And that's particularly dangerous, I think, in situations where you have volunteers calling and that student won't call out their answer, but also when you're calling on specific students and, again, you tend to skip certain students. So how do you feel teachers can become aware of including students who they are unconsciously leaving out for whatever reason, gendered or racial or...
I think it's really important because we do that, and if we look at active participation of all of the learners in our classroom, and I guess, again, it comes back to that notion of accountability requiring some sort of public demonstration. Now, that might just be writing on a piece of paper, but if it's not ever verbal, or we don't call upon, or some students we don't even check up on their written responses as often either. And it can be anything from, I'm not really sure how to say that person's name, or you're right, there'll be certain combinations. Sometimes we're not really sure the response we're going to get, so there's almost a level of fear around asking someone because we're not sure what response we're going to get, so it's much easier to go with the safe options in a classroom. But I think if we've got a level of being aware that we do have a group of students in our classroom, and every classroom has it, that have, you know, often very compliant but perhaps disengaged or not as engaged as they could be, and perhaps putting some checks and balances in and looking at the role and going, okay, so who might those students be in my classroom, and actually, you know, either through a checklist or saying, okay, I'm going to ask these 5 students today, or I'm going to make sure I hear a response or sit down and work with. But that requires a fair bit of discipline, that sometimes we get very busy and we start out that way, but we might get through a term and realise we haven't spent as much time with individual students. And certainly there are students that demand more of our attention, whether it's through misbehaviour, but also those very highly engaged students who are the ones that are likely to put their hands up and so on. Even when you're not choosing them, they will still, they're the ones that are likely to call you over and can you help me with this? And often they are very, very interesting, and therefore we naturally want to be engaged with them because they're engaged in what we're interested in. So it's those very quiet students. As you said, there might be a combination of it might be African students, it might be students with English as a second language, in which case it's a lot harder for us to feel like we can communicate on the same level even. But it's something certainly to be very aware of, that we all do it.
And interesting, you mentioned fear of student response, that would be a concern for teachers, because I remember reading that one thing, and some students hate this and teachers often do it, is teachers ask a closed question as if it was an open one. In other words, they want the right answer, but they asked it as if it was open and they would get any answer, and then they'll sort of, oh, well, that's okay, but let's move on to and find the student who's going to give me what I want.
Absolutely, and as I said, we don't do a very good job in our system of catering for gifted students, and often those students also think outside of perhaps our own experience and our own, I shouldn't say capability, but often those students can come unstuck when they know a little bit more than the teacher does about a certain thing, or they don't necessarily engage with the run-of-the-mill parts of the classroom activities, etc., but they come out with some amazing ideas, and teachers can find that a little bit confronting and perhaps feel a little bit insecure because perhaps those students do know quite a bit more than they do about particular things.
And then plan for what they're going to do when they have those students.
Absolutely.